The COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted human livelihoods and forcing organizations and individuals to rapidly reconsider their normal ways of working. As normalcy would return someday, organizations will be under tremendous pressure to make up for the lost time, possibly through reevaluating their customer strategies and pursuing aggressive cost cutting. Likewise, there will be pressure and hardships at an individual level as well. It will probably involve a change management exercise that we have not seen in our work for so many years around workplace efficiency. It is unprecedented and will require considerable thought as well as coordination amongst several stakeholders. It will require a change in attitude at an organizational level and as well as at an individual level. At the core of it is the fact that predictability has been thrown out of our lives, for good. For several years, we've been working with organizations in helping them adopt playfulness as a strategy to protect themselves against uncertainties. I want to talk about that today, and if time permits, touch upon a few ways of doing that. Organizations are all about people, so what I'm going to say applies not only to organizations but to individuals as well. Now, the pandemic has brought to the forefront the merits as well as the demerits of work from home. This also makes us realize the concept of work centers around a fixed place, like home, or a place that we go for work, like an office or a college or a store or a factory. So when do you think this began? When did people really begin to go to a place of work? What do you think? This really began during the Industrial Revolution, somewhere during the late 18th century or so. You see, before that, people used to do agriculture or worked from or rather at home. Before the Industrial Revolution, because work used to happen at home or in the cottages, the cottage industry had evolved. The cottage industry required basic tools to work with that you could actually keep at home. Now, what happened with the Industrial Revolution is that mechanization came in, and this came with machines which could not be housed in your cottage but had to be kept in a large central place. So people began to go to work because the tools of work were there in the factories. So the Industrial Revolution brought in lots of benefits that were not seen earlier, but I want to touch upon two of these. Number one, predictability, and number two, the assembly line. Life before the Industrial Revolution was unpredictable. Agricultural output and even the cottage industry were dependent on external factors like weather, supply of raw materials, or maybe even disease like the plague. So these were usually factors over which you had no control. You will have a few good years and then you will have a few bad years. Now what the Industrial Revolution did is that it moved the production of goods to a controlled environment, and in came predictability. So now what happened was that if you work for so many number of hours every day, you can produce so many number of units of something and the factory would make so much money. So if you work for so many days in a year, you would get so many days of leave and you would get so much money and kind of predetermined benefits. So the results of efforts were known in advance and was highly predictable. So over years, management theories and economic theories developed around such predictability. Concepts like Six Sigma and their earlier versions were born from a belief in the need to drive efficiency as the world became more and more global and the need for goods and thereby efficiency increased. Predictability ruled. The other gift of the Industrial Revolution was, of course, the assembly line. Different categories of skilled laborers worked at different points along the assembly line, assembling goods. As industrialization raged on, the need for white-collared workers to look after the factories came up, and the workplaces were born. In the initial years, such workplaces were part of factories, but later on business owners discovered the merits of keeping the two separate, and whole new districts of office blocks came up. But something strange was happening inside these workplaces that housed white-collared workers. The design of these workplaces were similar to the assembly line in the sense that the layout reflected both hierarchy as well as the type of work. Different types of workers were clustered together and a sense of hierarchy was followed. The junior most guys would get smaller desks, the seniors would get slightly larger desks, and so on, with the top management getting private offices and the number one guy, of course, getting the corner office. So the vertical thinking of the assembly line had followed into these air-conditioned offices as well. Now, just for a moment, let's go back to the assembly line. Think about predictability in the assembly line in conjunction. The assembly line was all about predictability. If you do this, you get that, and in so much time and in so much cost, period. The same philosophy had followed to the air-conditioned offices as well. If you do this, you get that. Now, this was not entirely wrong, because in the pre-computer age, even in the offices, most of the work that people were doing was cause and effect work, where the end results were predictable. At a personal level, professionals knew how many years they needed to work to get to the next promotion and what they needed to do to get a certain bonus, and so on. You get the drift, right? People found it safer to stick around in the same company for years and years, because they were very certain about the benefits that they would get as they climbed the corporate ladder. There was no merit in changing your organization. Such a change would actually mean that you now have to climb a different ladder, a ladder that you may not be familiar with, and thereby diminishing your chances of reaping the benefits of climbing the ladder itself. Now, if you have seen pictures of offices that came up over the ages, they may have changed in color and the type of furniture, but the layout more or less remained the same. Hierarchical. I mean, the junior most on one side, overlooked by the managers, who were overlooked by their managers, and so on. It was all about vertical thinking and predictability. But then something happened. Actually, two parallel things happened and finally merged into one.